The complicated politics of using women leaders' first names. The widespread use of Harris's first name in a major election cycle offers a fresh case study on how we publicly reference women in power as her opponent repeatedly pronounces it in confounding ways. When goes by herself, it can project more approachability, a sneaky long-time double standard expected of women that, ultimately, can be valuable in resonating with voters. On the flip side, referring to women in leadership by their first names can diminish their power. There's this idea that first names personalize people. They humanize them, Associate Director of the Center for told. It's not just politics determines the way people refer to professionals by first or last names, including women in medical fields, and perhaps even more so if they have big platforms. Harris is the second woman to ascend to the Democratic presidential nomination in the last decade and U.S. history. From media sea cover to her campaign's social media accounts, uses of her first name have been intentional. Campaign fundraising and merch refer to her as, with some exceptions, like a mug. Campaign signs have read since she announced Tim as her running mate is scarcely called. News outlets have written explainers on how to pronounce her first name and the significance behind its meaning, Lotusin. Hillary Clinton was often referred to as during the 2016 election. There are some key nuances, namely that there had been her husband Bill, though she was also previously U.S. Secretary of State and U.S. Senator from. Initially with she wanted to soften her image and make herself more approachable, a lecturer in comparative politics and voting behavior at told. We can always argue that in politics, in society, in academia, there is misogyny where if women are too tough, they seem unapproachable. Voters can view women in power differently depending whether they're members of governing bodies versus in executive positions, Sinsdak said. Some of the most prominent women lawmakers have been called by their full names, for example, and the late senior. As a nickname for, involves her full name. On the also fit this mold. Former presidential candidate is a prominent exception. She was elected to an executive office as governor of though was not primarily called by her first name. Less conventional first names stand out and in spheres like pop culture and sports can even be a sign of unmatched success. In the case of Senior, who has mounted multiple unsuccessful bids for the presidency, he's just some of former approach to Harris's name most recently. The indiscernible nickname is reminiscent of his repeated use of former middle name. It fits into a pattern of taking names that don't seem like the typical, standard name and othering them, said. Harris used various combinations of her first and last name during her first presidential campaign in 2020. She's publicly and privately riffed on her first name in her personal life, establishing her relationship as to her stepchildren. She is also the daughter of immigrants and identifies with more than one race, neither of which are white, an experience true to a growing number of. By Axios Style Guide, presidents are not referenced by first name. If she wins, she'd be President Harris. Harris hot on the trail but stayed away from reporter until now.